Okay, good morning. So we continue our weekly review and biur, try to delve a bit deeper into Hamshachayim Beis. So since we're in the middle of the topic of Pshittus and Tziyur, that on one hand, the Erein Sof Lifnei Tzimtzum is Pasha B'tachlis HaPshittus, meaning it's seamless, shapeless. On the other hand, we talk about Sesfiris Agnuzis. So it seems like a direct contradiction, and the Rebbe Rashab actually says that. In the beginning of Maamar 6, Kol Machlekes, he says, so to say that they reside near each other, in other words, they're not seser one another, fine, because they're not yet in a shape and form. Eish and Mayim are not yet defined as actual fire and water. So in Ruchni Senyanim, you can have Eish Shalom Bimreimov. They can be near each other. But to say that Pshittus is a big jump. It's not just saying they can get along. Pshittus means there's no change, no difference. So I had mentioned the Rebbe's letter, which the Rebbe wrote in Tafshin Tes. And I thought instead of just talking about Baal Peh, let's read it inside. And it's interesting how Chassidim understood it before the Rebbe's letter. But this is the Rebbe's letter. This is one of the few letters, not the only one, where Chassidim saw the Rebbe's, the Rebbe was B'chlal Hatzon Lechus. He didn't see his Ge'enes and Lamdus and so on. Now we know it because we see the Shemus. But this is one letter that I believe was written to Saul Goldstein, yeah. It says here Goldstein. Chassidus, Mamish touches this Indian, so let's learn it inside. So I'm going to read now and learn inside. It's both in Igris Kodesh, volume 3, Chelik Gimel, page Lamed Aleph at the bottom. It's a Igeres Taf Lamed Gimel, and the Kutei Siches is printed in a Sofis of Chelik Tezvov, page 473. Yeah. Page 473. Chelik Tezvov. Oh, Igris is Chelik. So this is Chassidim from time to time would write to the Rebbe Shilas, it was a Biurim, which around approximately Tafshin Hey, Tafshin Vov. In it, there was a section called and answer it. And that later, it was called Chuvas Abiurim. And then later it was printed in a Kuntish Chuvas Abiurim. Now it's on the Igros Kodesh, and they'll say in the bottom. But the famous letters from the big long letter by Mason from the Rebbe, I don't know if you've ever gone through these letters. It's Kedai. It's the Rebbe in full glory, because he wrote one of the only things we have for himself in his letters. Now, this is the Rebbe as well. It seems maybe 10 pages. In the form of Shaila Maina. Shaila Maina. Okay. So it's a letter from you. To this. This is the question asking. How could you say for the Tzimtzum in the Eir Lifnei Tzimtzum that there is different levels? Shari Gulam V'Yesh Onof Beis, Shuri Field, Poshet Seems Shover Bashva Achas. It's complete. Everything is equal there. There's no levels. Maamar says that in Eitz Chaim. Nowadays, it's the Rebbe doesn't refer to Sfir. It says B'chlal Madregas. We know in Chassidus that talks about Madregas Lifnei Tzimtzum. So now comes mine. Here's the Rebbe's answer. And B'chlal is the answer breaks into two parts. An initial answer, and then he goes Ube'emek. B'chlal is Ube'emek. The Rebbe goes deeper and a more broader sense. So read inside. The Rebbe is saying now. That what it says in Eitz Chaim, that the Eir is Poshet. Again, the word Poshet, everyone translates as simple, like Ish Poshet. But Poshet really comes from the word Pshittus. So Pshittus, simple, could also mean simple as in, has no Giluim, has no Milas. But Poshet could also mean something that has, in English, the word is shapeless or seamless. So like, for example, if you have, even in Halacha, you have things that are, like you have a piece of wood that's posh, have no shape in it at all. Once you make a tzir in it, once you shape it, it's not called pasha anymore. It's called mitzuyir. So the word pasha means shapeless or seamless. Those are the best translations I have. It could be other words as well that work. So the Rebbe says, Pure. Yeah, but pure doesn't answer. The question here is dargis or no dargis. You could have dargis and it could all be pure. Here the stira is chalkus. So mashanemer ala eir hanal shu poshet. What it says in Eitz Chaim that the oir, about the oir lifnei tzimtzum, that it's shapeless, seamless. Hainu be'erech seder ishtalshus. It means it's relative. Doesn't mean be'etzem necessarily. It means relative to seder ishtalshus, which begins after the tzimtzum. So the lifnei tzimtzum is poshet. Zeisem eres loirak be'erech ha'elamis, not just in relation to the worlds. The worlds we're talking about is Atzilus or even Ak, and all the worlds are Atzilus, B'ri, Yitzira, Asiya. Kim gam Siba Masubov. Okay, let's explain what that means. So, as we've talked about, and probably you've learned in other places, that when the Eibishter created Seder Shtalshus, he didn't just create a structure of Ilmus, Dargas. He also created the Etzem Inyan of a Darga. Even that didn't exist before the Tzimtzum. Kedima v'Icher means obviously something comes before another thing. By us, that's a dover poshet. That's Elam is bepshitas. By us is that everything is Kedima v'Icher. Your father is always going to be before the son. Past, present, and future. When we say, for example, Shem Havaya is Hoya Hoiva v'Yeh ke'echad, because there's no Zman. There's no such thing as past, present, and future. That's one example of Kedima v'Ichur. So before there's actually the actual Atzilus comes before, but it first created the concept of before. Like the famous answer from to the what existed, why to create the world at the time you created it. What was there before Bereshis Bara Elokim? So the Ramagid answer is there was no. When you go to let's view second Bereshis Bara, the concept of Zman is Kedima v'Ichur as past, present, and future. That's Sheishis. Yom Bara Kadosh Baruch Hashem Elokim Asher Shemayim V'Sa'aretz. It says Sheishis Yom Karel, create. What does it mean? 6 days God created heaven and earth. It's missing a word. The B'Sheishis. So the Zohar says, because the Eibishter created Sheishis itself. He created. So the Zohar says, because the Eibishter created Sheishis itself. He created days of Zman. So B'Kitzur, the Rebbe says here, in other words, not that which is already the structure before Elam is the Eibishter have to create a matzav that there's Kedima v'Ichur, that there's a Seder. The Rebbe also says Siba Mesubov. Siba literally means Avim Ben. The Avim Ben is Taka Siba Mesubov as well. But you can have a Kedima v'Ichur that's not Zavke, one is totally in the other. So the second thing in the Shtalshus the Eibishter created is Mesubov. People try to interpret it as the Dunastir as Zman and Mokim Ruchni. Zman is Kedima v'Ichur, that's for sure. Remember, in Zman, Ruchni is in Dargis, it's clear for Bin. Both with thing of Chachma and Bin. The Chachma is the Siba for Bin. Siba Mesub, you don't talk about necessary Kedima v'Ichur. What you have Kedima v'Ichur and Siba Mesub, now you have a place to now create Elamis and Nivroim and all the Madregas which will fit into this hierarchy is another way of putting it, a hierarchy. And comes Ak, Kudim, Vrudim, Atzilus, Bri, Yitzira, Asiya, and all the dargas within them, the spheres and so on. So the Rebbe is saying that when we say Lifnei Tzimtzum now, Lifnei Tzimtzum, not only is it relative to Elis, but even relative to the Gdima v'Ichur Siba Mesuvov, illness, and prior to that, K'dima v'Ichur and Siba Mesubov, that's what the Tzimtzum accomplished. That's what the Tzimtzum accomplished. You can't say Lifnei Tzimtzum K'dima v'Ichur. You can't say you can say there's illness. So the Fi'erech, that which the Tzimtzum created, remember the Tzimtzum. So now the Kav, by definition, we learned that the kav, remember, it has a ma'alamata. And I think it was in the earlier Maamar, we saw the kav. The top part is closer to Eid Ein Sof. The lower part keeps going down and down. So the kav is actually the real Rebbe is hinting. It doesn't say Fedish, but K'tim V'Yichur, Sim Mesubov is essentially the kav. It creates the K'tim V'Yichur. But the musig of K'tim V'Yichur, it's Tzimtzum Allah. That's why Kabbalah brings that the kav doesn't go all the way down to the bottom of the eagle, of the cholol. So there should be higher and lower. That's the role of a kav. So b'meila kol zel rasa akai der tzimtzum. So if you add this, that's why we say. That's why the Eitz Chaim says, "Shu'er poshet shava b'ashvachas lefi erech," that which is after the tzimtzum. And the Rebbe goes the other side. Av b'chol zeh ein poshet hamiti. Even though relative to after the tzimtzum, we call it a poshet. It's not er poshet hamiti. Ha'amiti, the true pshittus. So that's the initial first answer. It's not a stira because the Eitz Chaim doesn't mean tachlis ha'pshittus. It means relative. Yeah, be'erech pshittus be'erech, something that is real structure. That is real structure. You have to say this because even if you want to say there were dargis, you have to say that can be tachlis ha'pshittus. Because the true pshittus is only achdus hapshuta, meaning the Eibishter's total unity. That b'chlal you can't say two in yon. Even the etzem musig of Eir is already not moir, not atzmus. So you have to say muchrich to say no matter what that Eir can be pshittus of etzem. Ubechol dover v'dover, says the Rebbe, everything movad at atzmus u'mahus. Is baruch. Yesh Beis in yonim l'chol ha'pachas. The Rebbe underlines l'chol ha'pachas. Hadover, the thing, uma shemahava eseh, and that which created it. See, here is, for example, this is real biur in Chassidus that of a real haskalah here. You don't find in any Maamar says mamash these l'shenis. So the Rebbe is adding now that you have to say b'lav hachi that atzmus is no such thing as pshittus legamri. Because everything has at least two things, the thing and what created it. Oir came from somewhere. So that already tells you it's not Pashat B'Kach Achlas HaPshittus. U'k'moyer be'er hana, yesh ha'er, like in the air that we're talking about, the air lifnei tzimtzum, you have the oir itself, the energy, or the light, whatever you want to call it, v'koyech ha'moyer shabai, and the power of the moyer that's causing that light to be. Shuhu, dveikusei b'hamoyer. What is the koyach hamoyer in the oir? That's the fact that the oir is attached to the source. You know, oir is dovuk b'moyer. So right there you have two things. So even if you would say that there's no dargis altogether, it's mamish. Now, because oir right there's also a source. Right there, totally. Now the oir is completely miyuchet. There's no davar nifrat chaz v'shalom. But this just atzmus, it does means that atzmus does not have another source, God forbid. That's pashut b'tach. People sometimes you may meet some people who say, you know, the so-called argument of the atheists. Now, of course, indeed has a beta, then he's not a real beta, amiti. That's the language of the Alter Rebbe in I guess Akedah Siman Chaf. Not going to explain it right now, but the point is that it's a Metzias Amiti. That's completely not like our Metzias. Metzias built in Metzias Nimtza and all the different Lashenas used. And that is only Atzmus. Nothing else can have a Muchrach HaMechuyev HaMetzias or built in Metzias Nimtza. That's the only time in Chassidus, when you know you're talking about Atzmus, when those three terms, in Teira Shalom, the Rebbe Rashab says, that whenever you say Atzmus, he means Atzmus Ha'er, doesn't mean Atzmus, just for the record. And the only time is when you actually say these words, because it's just like he says here, the only Atzmus you can say, Pashat graph is this. What means Pashat? We first learn, number one, Pashat can be relative to what comes afterwards. In other words, it's not Be'etzem, it's relative. And you have to say this because Oyer is not Moyer. So as soon as it's not the Mokker, it's not Atzmus, right away, it's not Pshittus Be'emes. Okay. Now the Rebbe is going to explain with the Kama Dugmois Leposhet Be'erech Halamata. To make it more palatable, it's like, where do you see any examples for this? So the Rebbe is going to give, where do you see any examples for this? So the Rebbe is going to give Kama Dugmois to explain something that's Poshet, only be'erech to that which is lower, but be'erech to what is higher, it's not poshet. Af shehu murkav be'erech, I should have read the sentence, okay. Kama dugmois leposhet be'erech halamata, af shehu murkav be'erech halamayla. So there are a number of examples to explain that something compared to low, but on its own, be'erech to what's higher than it's a murkav. So the Rebbe introduces the word murkav. Murkav is another word for the opposite of poshet. Murkav means that it's a composite of several things. Basically, everything in existence is a murkav. Usually the expression is like he's going to bring Eish Mayim Ruach Afer. There's no such thing in existence that we know of that's poshet. Everything is a murkav. Human being, creatures, everything is a combination of several different things. Which is one of the reasons Sifrei Chkira, Mer Nevuchim, and the Chassidus brings it, especially Sefer HaChkir from the Samach Tzedek. It's one of the rayas that the existence can't be its own creator because it's a combination of several things. If they come apart, existence stops being. So murkav means something had to combine them. But regardless, murkav, of course, in halacha you have murkav. Esrig, murkav is a apostle esrig. So he's going to say, okay, kamadu g'mur. Uk'maydawad ha-yesedus. So, 4 elements. Eish, Ruach, Mayim, Ofer. Now, just for the record, today, science does not accept that. That's more coming, they'll say it's primitive science back from the Greeks. That's how it was by Aristotle and so on, which just happens to be true. So the Rebbe has several letters, actually, that explains it in chemistry. It means there's 4 basic building blocks that everything is made up of. In one letter, the Rebbe explains that even the atom, which was discovered only in the last few hundred years, the atom is made up today of what they say is a neutron, a proton, an electron, and there's something that combines them all. And the Rebbe said the electron is like Eish, the neutron is like Ofer, Mayim is the proton, and then there's something that connects them all would be the Ruach. So this is from different letters from the Rebbe. In other words, the Rebbe did not insist that we have to say and reject what science says, that there's more than 4 elements, that basically the 4 elements is 4 like almost personality types. You see that in Tanya, right? The beginning of Tanya from the Shari Gedusha, from the Lachav, he brings Dal Yesedus as personality types, archetypes. That there's the Tchuna of Eish, the Tchuna of Mayim, and so on. So Dal Yesedus, so the way that Rambam explains, is that the Dal Yesedus, Shein Pshutim L'Gabe Shar Kol HaNevroim, they're poshet L'Gabe Shar HaNevroim. You've heard of the, like Yesed HaEish, Yesed HaMayim. Yesed HaEish is more like a Heyuli. It's not actual fire. It's like, actually, we learned this in Ayin Beis, in Perek, that Perek. I spoke about the Dal Yesedus. Perek Yutes. Am I right? Yeah. So he said there, how could Eish and Mayim come side by side? Because you're not talking about fire and water as we know it. Fire and water can't live together. You're talking about the Yesed HaEish. So the Rebbe is saying these Yesedis, as they are in their original form, are considered pshutim. In other words, they don't have yet the shape and form of fire or water. So the Gabe Shar Kol HaNevroim, so a nivra, for example, take any creation, any creature, a human being even. We have Eish Ruach Mayim Ofer inside of us, but it's already shaped and formed. The Yesed HaEish and the Mayim is pshutim, is pashat. So that's an example of pshitus, which is only relative, because obviously Eish Mayim, even in the Yesod, is not tachas pshitus. It's only relative to when you actually have a tziyur of Eish and Mayim. And on the other hand, you say the Eish and Mayim is Murkovim Lagabe Chemer Ha'yuli. So the Chemer Ha'yuli, the way the Rambam and the Ramban explained it at the beginning of Pasha Bereshis, that before the Talmud to say this, the Eibishter first created a Chemer Ha'yuli B'chlal, like a raw piece of clay. That was not yet even, you say the Eish or Mayim Ruach Hafer, even you say the Eish. Then in that raw, what he calls Chemer Ha'yuli, which is like, just as an example, he then shaped 4 you say this, but they're still not Mitsuya, like what we know as Eish Mayim Ruach Hafer. And then came Eish Ruach Hafer. So there's really 3 levels. So the Rebbe is giving the example that the Daled Yesedis, as they are, before they become a Tzir Prati, are Poshet Legabe the Tzir Prati, but Murkev Legabe the Chemer Ha'yuli. I know, sometimes the Mishalim can be more complicated than the Nimshal. The Rambam Hilchus to say that. Exactly. Seif Perik Gimel Perik Dalet. Ramban ala Teire B'tchilose. Eitz Chaim B'Sefer Bat Kedush Perik Dalet. That's from the Mittler Rebbe. So that's Dugma 1. I'm not going to elaborate because it's not important here to go into the Yesedis if we understand it. But it's an example. You have an example. A very balabatish way, you could say that example is basically, I just mentioned clay. So you take a piece of clay and someone's going to shape from it a pot. So there's stages. First you have just a raw clay, then you create an outline, and then you finalize it. So you could say right there you have Pshittus is all the fierach. The final product is the most mitzuyah. When you create an outline, it's like a poshet legabe the details, but it's still murkav legabe the raw entity. That's poshet in simple poshet words. The second dugma, and interesting just for the record, I don't know if you ever noticed this, the Rebbe was like very mediyuk in punctuation. You see a semicolon here. You're not going to find this very often. The Rebbe was very much into a colon, a semicolon. Are you familiar with these siyurim? You don't even know what they are, right? Every sentence has to end with a period. That you know. You know what a comma is? Like a snachta, pasuk, Aleph Beis Gimel. Instead of writing Aleph Beis Gimel, you make a semicolon that shows. The Rebbe said kama dugmois. So the first dugma was the Yesedis, and then he breaks it with a semicolon and say now is another dugma. So semicolon is not the end of the inyan, but it's the second category in what he's going to describe. Just as says, okay, so you can learn a little lesson in grammar. A semicolon is a dot and a comma. You see, a dot and a comma. A colon would be 2 dots. A colon you use when you start saying, you're going to have many colons. Minor, by minor. Yeah. You say minor, a colon means, okay, I gave you a headline, and now I'm going to give you the answer. So a colon, technically the Rebbe could have made a period, but a colon is more accurate technically. Later in the letter, ha'ara with a dot, not a colon. Anyway, that's part of the benefits of membership, that you learn a little grammar also. Okay, good. So the second dugma that Rebbe gives is a neshama and guf. Haneshama mislabeshes, hamislabeshes beguf. The neshama that manifests and encloses itself in a guf. Remember, the neshama before it came to a guf, he says, she pshuta be'erke. The neshama be'erech the guf is pashat. If someone were to ask you, what does a neshama look like? You would say, it doesn't look like a body. A body is a complete siyur. A body has a reish, guf, regel, all the different limbs and organs. It's a completely siyur. You can't say a body is poshet. But neshama compared to a body is poshet. Because the neshama is not made up of parts, definitely not physical parts. So it says, she pshute be'erke, rei tanya perik nun aleph. There he talks about the keches haklulin b'nefesh, that before they come out as keches, they're all poshet in the nefesh. But when there's a kech hariyah, when it's in your eye, it's mitzuyah. The power of hariyah is now functioning, and you're looking through the eye. The eir is in the keli. It's all very clearly defined. But even the eir hariyah compared to the clay hariyah is poshet. Because the clay hariyah you literally can touch and you can dissect. The eir is a little more complicated. It's like electricity compared to a light bulb. Electricity is running now into all these appliances. So electricity compared to the appliance is poshut. Running now into all these appliances. So electricity compared to the appliance is poshut. Using it as an example to make it a little more easier to understand. Okay. But on the other hand, as a neshama tachlis apshitis, no. On the other hand, umur keves, the neshama is. Ve'erech etzem neshama. So the neshama that manifests in the body, is poshut l'gabe the body, but mukeves be'erech the etzem neshama, that is beyond the body. That, like I say, is not sheda be'efa makif. Karihi mischalekes l'naran chai v'oid. L'naran chai. V'oid would probably mean more dugmayas. Okay, so now we have the second dugma is the neshama. So there's a part of the neshama that's poshut l'gabe the body, but be'erech to the etzem neshama, it's naran chai. Naran chai is levels, not nefesh, roch, neshama, chai, yechida. Now, why is the Rebbe called etzem neshama, not yechida? Because as you know, Chassidus says, chamisha shemes nikru lo. So you have to say there's a law. Because 5 names, even yechida, which we usually refer to etzem nefesh, is not mamash etzem nefesh. Because 5 names you call what's law means there's something that's beyond the 5. That's etzem neshama, which doesn't have the tziyud even of nefesh, ruach, neshama, chai, yechida. So these are the 2 dugmayos. Just want to say one thing before we go to the emek, or b'cholos of the emek. A very interesting point, and that is, מה סתירה?
לא, זה לא סתירה, אני מתכוון, כשהרבי פה אומר, היא מתחלקת בין נרם חיים. בוא נגיד, לכל אחד בנשמה שלו יש נפש בנשמה חי יחידה.
נכון.
מצד שני, כשהוא מבטא נפש מלכות ועשייה, הוא מתכוון שכל אחד יש דרגות בנשמה. זאת אומרת, כל אחד מקבל, לכל אחד בנשמה שלו יש כאילו יותר גדולות, יש כאילו מעלות.
בסדר. אבל יש, but then there's the element of עצם הנשמה. שלמעלה מכל זה. שאין שם בכלל דרגס וישחלקוס.
כשאומרים שהנשמה שלי מגיעה ממקום יותר מעלה, מה הפשט? איך מתלבש פה במכתב?
הנשמה, I'll say in English just for the body, is not עצם הנשמה.
Yeah.
So whatever it says in Tanya is talking about the neshama as it's going into the body. Nefesh moshel is shaykha to nehi, to maisa, ruach midas, neshama meichin, chay yechida keser, rotzen tainu. And etzem neshama remains outside of the slapshus. I'm not sure why what he says in Tanya is not it's just he's talking more dargas. I have to see what you mean. I'm not sure. I'm not clear what you mean exactly. Okay. So I wanted to say one thing before we went to the emek. The reason this is so difficult to understand, really, maybe it's not difficult for you, but it's because we're not used to pshittus altogether. We live in a world that everything we do is all tziyur. B'chlal, I think I mentioned this in a previous year. The Inyanim Chassidus introduces us to dargas that we don't have every day. You know, we sit here at a table, you breathe, you eat, you sleep, you're going to go home, you're going to learn. Everything is about tziyur. Everything is a structure. Everything is mugushim. I don't mean even grub or yeshus and chumrius. I just mean we live in a world that from our birth, we never experienced pshittus. You know, so when you hear it the first time, you realize, there maybe that's such a thing, but it's not something that's customary. So we're not accustomed to it. So that's why it's hard for us to really be tefis. We have to try to be mitzayir or something that's not really in our world. Now, the truth is, when you start learning Chassidus and you learn it more and more, you get used to it more and you start realizing, 1 second, it's true. Most of the reality, truth, is actually not the world that we know. I'll just give an example. Maybe I gave this example once. There was a scientist. His name was Arthur Eddington. He was a physicist. And when they first were discovering the secrets of the atom, atomic energy, which is really what drives all technology today, forces you don't see. Nobody has ever seen an atom. It's too small, even under a microscope. But they were coming to all kinds of conclusions. They created an atom bomb. Your cell phone wouldn't work if they did not understand quantum mechanics. I'm not going to go through the science of it. But bottom line is, today, most of the life that we know is driven by invisible forces. You don't know how is it possible that in one little phone like that, you can have millions of pieces of data? Doesn't seem possible. Everything is metafis mokim. How could it all fit in? You know that in 1950s, to have the data you have in your phone, you needed computers that were 20, 30 blocks long, because there was no way to put so much information in this type of company. Even now, we don't really understand it. We just know it works. Or even think of radio and television. That you could sit on your phone and watch something that's happening in Australia or on the moon, for that matter, and it's exactly that seer. So you start asking yourself, 1 second, in this screen you have a human being? Of course not. How are they transferring data? It takes 14 hours to travel to Australia. What is it? Even more? 18 hours, 17 hours. 18 hours, no better. Okay, it takes so long to travel. Here, in a second, you get an image that's not a simulated image. It's not like an artist telling you this is something. It's mamish what's happening. Basically, Zmanu Mokum as we know it. So these are great dugmoyes to explain Yanim Ruchnim. But it doesn't come easy for us to understand it, because everything about us is shaped by time and space and structure and so on. But when you start learning Chassidus, you're starting to learn about Elikus. And Elikus, by definition, is more poshut than the Chayes Eliki is more poshut than the thing it's giving life to. When the Eibishter said Yehi Oir or Yehi Rakia, you can imagine the words the Eibishter said was more poshut than the Oir itself and the Rakia. Because the Oir Rakia is a Gashmizdik entity. And the Chayes Eliki is not a Gashmizdik entity. I'm just wanted to make it clear, because I think that's the challenge in understanding these things. So, but Haguf is the Kavanah. That's what Teirach Chassidus wants of us. To take a Rebbe that sees Gashmi like us and help us understand and relate to and even be margish in Yanim that are more ruchniistic, more edel. And that itself is a zichuch, hachemer. So the more we become to relate to our neshama, the more we become neshamadik. But it's a challenge because the guf doesn't think in language like the neshama. So I just wanted to point that out because I think it's vital to emphasize. Okay. I'm going to go to the next section. Let's see here. What do we are time-wise? Okay, why not? Now the Rebbe goes deeper now. If this wasn't deep enough, so okay, you can brace yourself. Buckle your seatbelt. Let's put it that way. Ubechlolus ube'emek. Now the Rebbe goes like this. Ubechlolus means more in general, and ube'emek in depth. So going more in depth in this. He doesn't say be'emek yesed. He just says ubechlolus ube'emek. He says like this. Mitzad ha'beida hine hakol hu poshet b'tachas hapshitus. If you look from the eyes of the beta of the Creator, till now he's talking about relative. That everything is relative. Now he's speaking, it's all a matter of perspective. From the eyes of the beta, everything is poshet b'tachas hapshitus, including Eir, including Tzimtzum, including Kedima v'Ichur, Sibah b'Subav, and Elamus. Because the Eibishter, it's all key. Everything is part of Eined Movadeh. Nothing but him. So even the Etzeminian of Dargis is only mitzad us, our perspective, not the Eibishter's perspective. So this is deeper. Why is it deeper? Because he's not just saying Lefi Erech. He's saying even after Eir exists, mitzad Eir is not Tachlis Hapshitas, but mitzad the Eibishter, everything is Tachlis Hapshitas. Without any different distinction, if it's the highest levels or lowest levels. On the other hand, mitzad hagiluyim, meaning not mitzad atzmus, mitzad giluyim, not mitzad abeda, hari hakol hu murkav. Everything is made up of parts, at least two, as we said, the thing and the creation of the thing. So now the Rebbe is giving us more than just that's two dargas. That taka, even that there's two ways to look at existence. Now, I think he's going to say it soon, but let me just spell it out. Now, this means, you know what he's saying here? So we say Eirei Sof Lifnei Tzimtzum is Pasha B'Tachlis Hapshitus from the Eitz Chaim. It's not just because it's Lifi Erech Shtalshus, but it itself is not Pasha. No, it's the consciousness of Beira dominates Lifnei Tzimtzum. So the Eir also is Tachlis Hapshitus. The Eibishter. In other words, if you want to look at existence from the eyes of the Eibishter, that's what Lifnei Tzimtzum means.
Isn't it the opposite of what we were saying before? So before we were saying that after the rest of the Shtalshus that there's Pshittus L'mayla.
No, before he said it's relative. The feel lower level, it's Pashut. The feel higher level, he didn't talk about till now. The Mitzad the Beira, the feel lower level, it's Pashut. The feel higher level, it's not Pashut.
The other way around, no?
No, the Rebbe is the Mitzad the Beira, everything is. So it's not just only Lefi Erech. Eirei Sof Lifnei Tzimtzum means how the Beira sees everything. Eirei Sof La'achar Tzimtzum is how the Nevroim see, how the Giluyim see it. So therefore, from the Eibishter's point of view, everything is mamish poshut. The Rebbe is going to give a dugma. It's not finished yet. He's going to give a dugma in Aveda that will make it clearer. The question is whether we stop here because this dugma is going to need biur. And what time is it? Yeah, I think we'll stop here and I'll just continue next week. I think this is worth reading because it gives us a tremendous havana in Ayin Beis, also where we're going to be learning afterwards. The kids of the Rebbe is going to give an adugman Aveda where the bitla of an Eved to the Odin, Kabbalah Sale, is so deep that there's no difference between a mitzvah sesa, like he says, a mitzvah daraisa, or mitzvah darabonon, or a digdur kalsel divrei sofrim. So why? Because it's all rotzen haba thing, or it's a small thing. And that's the perspective of Lifnei Tzimtzum. La'achar Tzimtzum, the perspective is that there is a structure. So it's not a stira because the Rebbe is saying there's two ways to explain Eirei Sof Lifnei Tzimtzum. One, that Lefi Erech, La'achar Tzimtzum is Poshet. Another, Mitzad the Beira, is Taka Poshet. And there's Taka no Dargis altogether. And Dargis is only Mitzad Os, Mitzad Giluyim, which we'll talk about. So I'll stop here just to be able to. We have one more section to do. This till the end is another few lines. Okay. Just for the interesting, the Rebbe is going to leave it all with a question still at the end of the day, on top of the order. But fine. So let's stop here. And you have a Rebbe